Welcome back to Church Girls Chats. I'm your host, Jasmine Simmons, and I'm back. So the last recording I did, it was my pregnancy testimony, and different people watched it and had feedback, and I thank you guys so much for watching and listening to it. And so since then, it's been a few months and I have had my baby girl, Ava, and I'm so excited. But I want to tell you guys my labor and delivery testimony. I will definitely not make it as long as the last one, but this got crazy. So I will hop right into it. So, basically, you guys heard about the pregnancy or whatever, how that whole thing is. So when I got to 37 weeks pregnant, well, first of all, I was very uncomfortable. I did not like being pregnant. But at 37 weeks, I just really was feeling like my body felt abnormal. Feel like I just can't do this any longer. And so anyway, I just had a feeling she was coming a little earlier than we thought. And so let me rewind back. In April, one day I was at church, and like whenever the Lord speaks to me, something very direct, I put it in my notes. And so he told me to get a prayer team for when I go into labor and delivery. And he had different individuals in mind, and he told me to ask them if I can contact them when I go into labor for them to pray and intercede for me. And I was nervous to do it. I kind of dragged my feet on it, mainly because it felt like a little arrogant, right? I just didn't want to come across like people have babies all the time, right? I didn't want to come across like I'm so special and this baby coming in this world so special that I need a whole prayer team for it. I know that sounds dumb. And I just felt nervous for some reason and a resistance to do it, but I'm glad I did it. And I asked the people probably a few weeks prior to having her, if they can be a part of my prayer team. And I told them what I was believing for and stuff like that. And so there's that. And so let me tell you why that was important. So I went in, I had my regular checkup on a Thursday. Everything was fine, everything was good. Like the whole pregnancy, I was healthy the whole time. Baby healthy whole time. And then that weekend, I just started getting different labor symptoms. And I wrote my doctor, and my appointment wasn't supposed to be for another week and some change. And I was supposed to be going every week, but they were so booked. But I had wrote them saying like that feels like when I wrote him to say what's going on, they said, well, let's squeeze you in for Monday, which was only a few days later. And so when I went on Monday, it was a regular morning. And that weekend, my husband just really felt like he just was like, I'm gonna get everything done for the baby. Mind you, we're still 3 weeks out. And when we went in on Monday, you know, we did an ultrasound because they thought she was going to be big because I looked kind of swelled at that point. And they did the regular urine sample, and usually the nurse is really nice, like, oh, perfect, everything's great. And this time she kind of looked and was like, have you been getting headaches? And I'm like, slightly, but I didn't think much of it. And so she left and wasn't her usual self. And then my doctor came in, and I'm like, and they looked really serious. So I'm like, okay. And they basically said there was protein in my urine. And since I also said I was getting headaches, my doctor came in and said, hey, I want you to go over to labor and delivery right now. And they're going to evaluate you and for a few hours. And basically they're thinking that I was having signs of preeclampsia. At the time, my blood pressure wasn't up. That's a major sign of preeclampsia. And basically he said, if they evaluate you and things look a certain way, he said, I'll have to come and induce you. And he said, you know, I'm not doing this just to do it. He said, this is for safety. And so I said, okay, but I actually was kind of happy because I was so uncomfortable that I just didn't want to be pregnant anymore. I was it was unbearable. And now it makes sense why. So basically, we went to labor and delivery. They do a 4-hour evaluation. My blood pressure starts shooting up. Never had blood pressure a day in my life. Never had blood pressure the whole pregnancy. And it starts going up and it wasn't coming down. So they basically just said, okay, we're calling it. Call her doctor. She needs to be induced. So they started the process, got me admitted in, gave me magnesium, which is this thing to help bring your blood pressure down. Wasn't really working too good the way it typically works. And so basically they induced me and I started the process of having the baby. And so they did the first part of the induction. And as the time's going on, I'm just swelling up more and more. My face is swelled, my body swelled, everything swelled. And I'm just super uncomfortable. I had to get, so it started to just be a lot. We ain't gotta get into all the details, but because I had the magnesium, they had to give me a catheter, which was the worst experience, one of the worst experiences of my life, to get a catheter put in awake, not numbed, not nothing. It was awful. My husband went back. Thank God we already had our hospital bag already in the car. The house was ready for the baby. I got everything done early. And so my husband, basically, I didn't have my phone on me. My phone was broke. So he went home, got my laptop, and basically texted all the ladies who I asked to be a part of my prayer team and said she told them what happened. They had to induce her, and basically it's like we rocking and rolling. And so they're praying basically during that time. We're not understanding the full significance of what preeclampsia really is. And so basically I'm just in labor so I'm in labor that day. So the next morning my doctor comes in, gives me Pitocin, breaks my water. The contractions really started coming in. And so I got an epidural. I was so swelled at that point, they couldn't get the epidural in my back. They had to do it twice, and I could bear it. Took a while because I was in excruciating. The epidural wasn't the thing that hurt. It was that there was so much fluid buildup. We didn't know at the time. There was so much fluid built up that they couldn't get it between, I guess, my spine or something. It was bad. It was so bad. And my mom flew in, changed her flight, came in early that day, a few hours later after my epidural. And I'm laboring, things are progressing. And so, basically my doctor leaves for the day. That second day says, hey, I expect her to have this baby by the time I get back in the morning. I'm not the doctor on call. Somebody else will deliver. He expected for us to deliver. And we didn't. I got stalled at 7 centimeters of I got dilated 7 centimeters, and didn't happen no more. And I had a great nurse who was with me all night, who we did everything we could to get the baby to move, for me to dilate, for pretty much to get things going. I did every position we could to get this baby out. I did not want a C-section. And so by the morning time, they're basically saying, okay, it's time. When it was time to switch shifts for the nurses, when her doctor comes in, basically he's going to do a C-section. And he gets there like, what the heck, she didn't have the baby, because they don't want me to keep going. One, I've been in labor for almost 2 days, at like a day and a half, almost 2 days at that point. And he had broke my water the morning before. They want you to have the baby, like, you know, you're at risk of infection once your water breaks. And so yeah. They basically saying we're going to get a C-section. I was really believing like, no, I'm not getting a C-section. I want one more check. Can the doctor come in? Can he come in and check me one more time before the C-section? we were praying. The nurses, thank God, like we had the best nurses in that hospital who were just Christian, who would just get up with us like, okay, we're praying, we're believing. We were just really praying, really believing like I was going to dilate more, so I don't have to, if the doctor seen that I dilated just 1 more centimeter, he would have let me keep going. And when he came in to check, I wasn't dilated anymore, and it just stopped at 7. And it's just like, what is going on? I felt so defeated. And they start moving so fast to get me back there for the C-section. It was just a whirlwind. And basically they start the process. I start to get very overwhelmed because my chest started to feel funny. And they kept just saying like, you're anxious, like, no, you're anxious. And I'm like, something just feels off. And so basically, I guess they gave me more, whatever they give me to do the C-section, and I don't recall any of it. After the tarp went up, I don't remember my husband being there. I don't remember anything. My husband says basically I was kind of like not fully there. I guess they brought the baby to me after they had, I just don't remember anything. And I just remember hearing once everything was done, hearing his voice in a distance. My eyes were closed, but I don't remember anything. And so once they were like wrapping up, they're about to, I guess, roll me out soon, I heard my husband's voice, and I heard the baby cry, and I start coughing. All this is going on like in the same seconds consecutively, like all at once. And so I start coughing, and I kept saying, I gotta cough. And I looked at the anesthesiologist who was by my head. I have to cough. And she's like, just cough. And I was like, no, something don't feel right. And then I start, mind you, I'm still on the table for the C-section. They just closed me up. And I tried my best to turn my body to cough because pink fluids start coming up when I was coughing. And then I said, I can't breathe, help. Because at first they seemed a little dismissive, and then I was like, help me, I can't breathe. And that's my last thought. And like, but right before then, I could hear my husband laughing, and I heard the baby cry, and I felt I couldn't breathe, and it was happening so fast. I didn't think I would make it. That's how bad it was. I thought that was it. These are my last moments, and all I could think was, well, I got to hear my baby's voice. I got to hear her cry. All I could think was, I get to hear her voice. And I was thinking she won't have her mommy. And then I had a quick thought saying, well, she has a good dad. And that's the last thing I remember after I said, help. But I really thought that was it. And so basically after that, I was knocked out. I was unconscious. I don't remember. Thank God the anesthesiologist was there. She put the stuff up, knocked me out for them to intubate me. And I woke up 24 hours later in the ICU with the tube down my throat. They intubated me. There's a tube down my throat. I can't move, and there's that. And so basically, from my husband tells me, is that him and the baby left out, and they're waiting for me to come behind. They're going to roll me out, and 20 minutes went by. He said that I'm sorry for my voice. I don't know why why it's scratchy right now. But he said they were like, where is she? And so eventually the doctor came out to him and my mom, who was there, and basically said an emergency happened. I had to be rushed to the ICU. And they just weren't sure what was going on yet. They wasn't sure, was it my heart, was it my lung? They didn't know. And so basically what happened was that all that fluid that I said was getting swelled up, that also was a byproduct of preeclampsia. That, mind you, the preeclampsia came out the clear blue. I had no issues, no signs. I didn't have it the whole time. Just on that day, mind you, it was a Monday. I just seen my doctor on Thursday. Everything was fine. And so basically fluid just kept building up, and now they're giving me IVs. The magnesium is more and more and more. That was so squeezed out in my body, in different parts of my body, that when they took the baby out, everything rushed in, and it rushed into my lungs, and all my lungs got filled with fluid where I couldn't breathe, which is one of those extreme cases of preeclampsia that is fatal. And doing research, learned that a lot of women have passed due to the same incident happening to them. And so basically I woke up a day later. My husband says that after he gathered himself, he texted my prayer team, who's been praying this whole time, and told them what was going on. And there was one particular lady who really stepped up and was in contact with him, who from our church that we go to. And the crazy thing about that is, when I was pregnant, I was going to the prayer meetings at church, and one day I met her. One day, for some reason, I got super filled with anxiety and fear, and I just asked to be prayed for. And I don't typically pray about stuff like that, and I'm not like, oh, I show my emotions and that. I'm not that. But it was so gripping that night for some reason at the prayer meeting, and she ended up talking to me about her story, and we exchanged numbers, and she checked on me the rest of the pregnancy. She was there at the prayer meeting. So mind you, that's the last time I've met her. That one time, that's it. Didn't see her. I've probably seen her at church probably 1 or 2 times after that, but I did not know this lady. She was really just there for my husband, and really there for us, and really praying, and had the whole church praying. Mind you, we're new to this church. We don't really know anyone. And the little bit of time we were there, I was like, then I disappeared because I got pregnant and was so sick I wasn't going. And at the end of my pregnancy, I wasn't going. So God just had things in the midst. And mind you, he told me to get a prayer team. Thank God that I was obedient, because they were praying through that whole thing that we didn't know was about to happen. And thank God that I believe it was the Lord that had me stall at 7 centimeters, because so basically the same thing, my doctor told me the same thing would have happened if I had the baby vaginally. The same thing would have happened, and they would have had to intubate me awake. And that's nothing that I can even fathom, okay? Thank God I had the C-section, because the anesthesiologist was there, and because she was there, she was able to knock me out immediately for them to intubate me. And those few seconds could have been fatal or not, you know, me living or not. And so I thank God that as though we were praying for me to be able to have the baby, we didn't know that God was still protecting me and keeping me safe by me having the C-section. And so basically, my husband said the first time he came down to see me, I'll insert the picture. He said it was crazy, something you see in a movie, and I was relying on the machine like 90% or something like that, I think he said, to breathe. He said he didn't know what the outcome was. He didn't know what was going to happen. They wasn't sure of really nothing, but he just really stood on the word. And my mom is just like raving about him, that like he made it, the first thing that came out of his mouth was that she's going to live. And he just stood on his faith and believed that everything would be fine. And so people just pretty much praying for the next 24 hours for me while I'm in there. And so when I was in there, after a while, I began to slowly come out of it slightly. I don't have many memories, but my first memory was hearing an elevation song. I don't remember which one, but an elevation worship song. And I was thinking, oh, I didn't know they play this in the hospital. And they had Alexa in the rooms. And my husband, when he went down there, he told the nurse, put on some worship music. And they had that playing. He made sure they had that playing in the room when I was in there. And I had a really great nurse. And so as time went on, my husband had to fill me in on stuff because I don't remember much. I slowly began to write stuff down. I asked the nurse, can I write? Because I couldn't talk because I have the tube down my throat. So I'm writing stuff down. And I said, I don't want to see my husband because I didn't want to cry. Because with the thing, any movement, you feel like you're choking. And so you don't want to move, you don't want to cry, anything. It was just awful. And so I don't remember really my mom and my dad. My dad got there in the middle of the night. I don't remember them coming, but I remember for a slight second my husband being there. And I wrote in his phone. I could barely see. Everything was blurry. I could barely see. But our generation so used to texting that we know where the letters are for the most part. I could barely see them. And I asked, like, how's the baby? Is the baby okay? Did anything happen to her? Is she okay? You know, he was like, she's 5 pounds something. So then I was worried, like, is she too small? He's like, no, she's fine. I was like, is she in the NICU? He's like, nope, she's fine. She's healthy. And so that next day, when they said that things were better, they said, okay, we want to get the tube out. And I had to pass the breathing test. The first time I couldn't pass it because I was just panicking too much. I don't remember that though. I think a lot of stuff I don't remember. A lot of stuff I'm saying based off what my husband told me. A little bit I remember. I think it was just so traumatic. Like even the parts before this, like through labor, I barely remember. I think it was just like, you know, our memory sometimes wipes it out. And I think it was just so traumatic that my brain is just not remembering too much. And then they said, we'll try it again in an hour. And I have never been so determined. All I could think was, I gotta get to my baby. I gotta get to my baby. It's been a day already. I have to get to my baby. And trying to pass that test. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, to pass that breathing test with the tube down for them to take it out. I passed it, so eventually it came back to take it out. But I still had to be in the ICU for a while, for another, my time just didn't exist there. I was there for a total of 9 days. So for a day or two, another day or two until I was able to get released from the ICU to go see my baby, because my blood pressure still wasn't coming down. And so once the tube came out later on that day, my doctor came down, explained to me what happened. And basically he was just like, I don't know how your heart didn't stop with this. And that was just very scary to think about. And knowing that just God preserved me. God saved my life literally for me to be here. And that I since learned that so many people didn't make it in the exact same situation. And so basically after another day or two, it was awful. I hadn't seen my baby still. They're like, do you want to see a picture? I'm like, no, I want to meet her face to face. It was just awful. They're trying to get my blood pressure under control. Usually by now, once you get the magnesium and all this medication, it would level out in these situations, and mine wasn't. And so after a while, they got it together where I could go back to the maternity wing, and I met my baby. I was so nervous. I was scared, like, will our bond be off, or this, all these things. And I met her and just fell in love immediately. Yeah, and got to be with her immediately. The director of the maternal wing, she's like, get her nursing, you know, get her up there, get the baby up there, because I really want to breastfeed. And my baby she just knew me. It was like days. It almost felt like she's like, where were you? You know? And so I got to be with her. But then the next day, my blood pressure kept going up again, and they couldn't get it under control. And they said, we got to take you back to the ICU, because if the blood pressure keeps going up, it damages your kidneys, it damages this, you can start seizing, and you can, if it keeps going higher, you can stroke. And I had to leave my baby after 24 hours and go back to the ICU. I cried so hard, and it was just a mental torturous game after that for the next few days in the ICU. And from there, so basically what happened was, when everything happened, they also said my lungs was covered in fluid. My kidneys got acute damage. There's a few other things that they kept checking for, and I don't remember. But within a day or two, the fluid was gone. When they did another x-ray, my kidneys were still recovering. They thought something with my heart, but that was fine. They found out after a few days. So at that point, it was really getting the blood pressure under control of my kidneys for the next few days. Mind you, because it was just so much going on, because I got to be my baby and got to breastfeed. So now the next day I'm in the ICU, all my milk comes in and I'm gorged. So I'm like pumping, and my liquid gold comes in there. So I'm pumping it out in the ICU, which is awful, because that's a whole nother story, the ICU. But basically My husband was just amazing because he was with my baby. He was feeding her through a syringe with his fingers. Hard to explain. You probably can Google it. So that she wouldn't get used to a bottle, so that when I got out of the hospital, I could breastfeed. So he's the only one doing that. So he's like getting milk from me, taking it to the baby, feeding her, being with her, doing skin to skin with her. In the meantime, then running back there with me, running from my baby to me pretty much around the clock. And my parents were there helping too, but they didn't feed her. Only he did. And so that was just so loving. And he didn't have to do that. He could have just said, give her the formula, give her the bottle, whatever. But because it was so important to me to breastfeed, and it was something that I wanted to do so bad, he wore himself out doing what the doctor suggested to ensure that I could, because all the odds were against me with breastfeeding, because you're less likely to successfully breastfeed when your baby comes early, if your baby's small, and obviously if they take a bottle, and if you're not initially with them, and all those things happen. And we had no issues once I got out the hospital, and I thank God for that none of those things were affected. Our bond wasn't affected, nothing like that. And it's just nothing but the Lord. And so yeah, we spent the next few days of them trying to make sure I'm good, recover. Mentally, it was just awful. I had so much anxiety. In the ICU, they don't let no one stay the night with you. It wasn't until the last few days they let my husband kind of like stay anyway and stay the night with me, even though they weren't supposed to. So we just had favor with that. But at night, it was just I just had to ask for Xanax, because I would wake up thinking I'm in the OR again, can't breathe. And so I'd wake up like, and like just panicking all the time, and just by myself throughout the night. And it was terrible. It was just terrible. I didn't walk for days because I still had the catheter. I didn't eat for days. So then when I finally did start walking, mind you, I have a C-section, I ain't walked for days. All this that happened, it was just them. They couldn't believe. The whole hospital heard about what happened. So like when nurses are coming to my room, or a cleaner is coming to my room, they're like, oh my gosh, you're the one. We heard what happened. This is crazy. I can't believe you alive. I can't believe you look. So it was a big deal. And people just continued. There were so many Christians who were doctors and nurses, because they had to keep coming in to draw blood, take x-rays, do this, it was constant around the clock. On my chart, it said I did over 100 and something tests, because they had to test my heart, my lungs, my kidneys, everything. And so different ones and specialists are coming in, cardiologists, everything's coming in. And there were just so many doctors and nurses who would come in to pray with us and say, I'm praying. And they would say, you mind if I shut the door and we pray? And it's just so important for Christians to be the light in dark places and be bold. They didn't know if I was a Christian. And it was just so uplifting that I got out of there. And so it was crazy. And so eventually they got my blood pressure under control after a few more days. They took me back to the maternity wing. My baby got discharged. They took her, my parents and my husband took her home. But when I got back there, they said she can come back to stay the night with me as long as my husband stayed too. And so I was able, they put me in a really nice, like a spacious wing, and I got to be with her. And we just had so much favor. The doctors would take her at night for me to rest, or the nurses help me learn how to make sure she's latching properly, making sure everything's good. And I got discharged, like I said, after 9 days. And I was on 3 blood pressure medications that I had to take 3 times a day. I was on a kidney medicine because, like I said, my kidneys had damage. And I think that was it that I was on. I can't remember, but I think that was it by the time we left. And we finally got discharged, and my parents were still at the house, cleaned my house, cooked, and was so happy. And it was still a journey afterwards of just torment in my mind, of feeling anxious and fear, and having to really get a hold of that because of what happened. because it wasn't just physically, it was mentally, of feeling yourself can't breathe, feeling like you're in your last moment of life. So yeah, so I say all that to say, basically over the weeks I recovered from the C-section, so now I can say it took less than 2 months. I'm off, like, it's been 2.5 months now. So a few weeks ago I'm off of everything. At my 6-7 week follow-up with my OB, I was off my blood pressure medicine, all 3. And then a week or like 2 weeks later, I think 8 weeks, at week 8, I went to go see the kidney doctor, and I'm off of my kidney medicine. It only took 2 months, and they said that they were thinking there were some doctors saying they thought it would take like months. Some of them thought some things might be permanent, but it only took 8 weeks for me to be off everything, fully recovered. When they did my blood, my kidney doctor said everything's back to normal. Mind you, I don't want to lie and say the number's wrong, but whatever, and I don't know what the different stuff is called, but when I say it was like not good, it wasn't good initially. And for it to be fully recovered, and he just wants to follow up with me in a few months to make sure everything's 100% still going well. And everything's good. I get around good. I'm just so happy with my baby. I'm so happy. I just love her so much. She's just a joy. I love being a mom. I love all of the things, from just being with her during the day to breastfeeding. And I just thank God that I didn't feel like I can't bond with my baby because of this. I can't breastfeed because of this. I can't do the things, or I thank God I didn't get postpartum depression. That was a thing that they really wanted to check for with everything that happened, was to make sure I didn't have depression or anything, and I didn't. You know, the first like 2 weeks I had baby blues that came on and off, just randomly. Like, you know, I don't know if you know, baby blues is not postpartum depression. It's just like your hormones are still coming down and different things. So it's like I'll just bust out crying sometimes for no reason. But that just like faded away after like 2 weeks. But yeah, and I just thank God that I'm here. I'm healthy, I'm whole, my baby's healthy, my baby's whole. My baby gets to grow up with her mom, my husband gets his wife. And I just guess the message I just really want anyone to hear, because I know Church Girls isn't, I know I've talked about this, the second video about pregnancy, and I know a lot of you guys are younger and not in that phase looking for that, but I hope you can hear the Holy Spirit speaking to you about the message behind it. Is one, when the Lord says something to do something, be obedient. I would have never in a million years thought my life would be at stake, and that when the Lord told me to get that prayer team, it could be make or break. That when I went to that prayer meeting that night and met Catherine from my church, that she was a connection from the Lord who stood there in the gap for us so hard. And so many people did, but she was just a God sent who was calling and praying. And it's just like, one, be that for someone, but two, just like, I didn't even feel like going that night, I remember. And that she just was there. I just can't imagine if I didn't ask the different women to be praying from the time I got in labor. Two, y'all know my I don't have my book by me, I thought I had it. Y'all know my new workbook about relationships that I have, that you can buy off Amazon, where I talk about marriage and kingdom marriage and picking out the right husband. Get you somebody who know how to stand on that word and have faith, and don't panic and just start speaking anything else. My husband, I already knew who he was and the faith he had and stuff like that, but he really showed up and didn't panic. To walk in the room and see his wife like that and needing a machine to breathe. And he had to jump in that. He's never even dealt with the baby. He never changed a diaper and had to spring into action and play mommy and daddy for the first week of our baby's life. But not just that, but just believed, just stood on the word and believed for my full recovery. It's important, because do not be out here having babies with these people, with these men. One, just marrying anybody, but having babies with these men and doing something that can be life risking for somebody who don't even know how to properly pray, believe, stand in the gap, go the extra mile so that your desires of breastfeeding can be met, who will just sit here and say, I don't know, or pass it off to you. He could have easily just had my mom do half of the stuff, and he didn't. He did what he needed to do as my husband and as Ava's father, and I'm just grateful. And get you a husband who know how to stand on the word and pray for you when you can't pray for yourself, and you can't do anything. I couldn't do anything. And so I just wanted to tell my story and say we thank the Lord I'm here. I'm so grateful. All year, one of my favorite songs have been, you're not done with me yet. There's so much more to this story. That song by Elevation Chandler Moore, and that's how I feel. Like, that song brings tears to my eyes now of, he's not done with me yet, and that he saved my life. And other people haven't been fortunate in that exact situation, that the Lord literally just covered me. And I'm alive to tell the story. I'm healthy and whole, nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing lacking. And that although the weapon was formed, the enemy really tried it, bringing in that last minute sneak attack with this preeclampsia so severe, so strong, and was really trying to take me out. And y'all already heard my pregnancy testimony of already the enemy fighting against me just to get pregnant. And now it's like, oh, you tried it. Like, I have this baby, and it's like he tried it. But all I can say is that God got the glory. People were amazed of how well I recovered, the nurses, the doctors. And like I said in that last video, of that I want when my daughter come into this world, that she brings God glory, and she's used for a purpose from that very beginning. And that whole hospital know that you can't walk away saying God's not with them when you seen how bad those nurses were running up to us crying because they thought this was it for me, or they thought they knew how bad it was. And to see in a matter of a week I was walking out of there fine, looking fine. Even when I went to my OB appointment, the nurses there were just like all over themselves, that I can't believe how good you look with what happened. And so, no, I don't believe this was God's plan. I believe this was an attack from the enemy, but God can use all things to work together for the good for those who love him, are called according to his purpose. And I love him, and I'm called according to his purpose, and he used this for the good. And I believe that faith grew in God and got to know Jesus in a different way because of what happened. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want it this way, but it happened nevertheless. So there's my story. And I'll be back for more videos, and thank you for listening.